don't know.
Hello everyone, live from the River House. It's Meghan and MysterE.
Hey, we introduced ourselves at the beginning this time.
Yes, we did. We are on it. Episode 2 of our grand journey into the mystery and miracles of love.
Yeah, and I'll be checking in on any comments that are made. So let me just get this shared out real quick. But maybe we could start by you describing a little bit about where we're at in the lunar cycle.
Oh, that's a great idea. So if you look up in the sky tonight, you're going to see the first quarter moon. And the moon gives us an accurate reflection. Hello, Jim. Nice to have you with us.
Jim, so good to see you. Oops, I'm listening to ourselves. That's not working.
If you look up in the sky, you see a first quarter moon. And the reflection of the light of the sun on the moon gives us a roadmap, if you will.
I'm sorry, but I'm trying to share it and I can't do it without you hearing yourself.
Well,
it's a little bit of a throw off.
I'll just keep going.
Hey, Debbie.
So the light of the sun on the moon, the reflection, is giving us a depiction of our resistance. So if you were with us last week, you remember we set some intentions, or at least we talked about setting some intentions together about our connection. And what happens in the very beginning of the lunar cycle is that the moon begins to reflect the sun's rays, and that shows us our resistance. So a lot of times in the beginning we set some intentions, we're all excited about it, and then lo and behold the resistance shows up right as we begin the lunar cycle. So now we're in what's called Are Your Hands in the Dream, and this is taking off of lucid dreaming, where if you're in a lucid dream and you want to participate more, you find your hands and then you find your body and you get into life. And really what happens is our resistance, Meghan, comes into the field about the intentions we set on the new moon. This is the time to make sure that our hands are in the dream, we're not lost in a story, and we're working on ourselves. We're working on our life, we're working on the mission that we're here to do, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and it comes after a phase of the moon that we went through this week, which is right after setting the new intentions with a new moon, which is, oh shit, I said yes. And so a lot
now what?
Now what? And so that's really the phase of the cycle that we're in now, which is are we actually going with the intentions that we set? Did we let the resistance take over? Or are we working through the resistance, and especially as it relates to a connection or as to a goal that you're setting for yourself, then what that would look like is, am I working with it? Am I working through it? Or do we get back into avoidance? Do we get into delusion? Do we get into isolation? Or are we really actively participating? Are our hands in the dream? Are we staying focused on the intentions that we set? And how do you feel like that's been going for you through this moon cycle?
Oh, I just skated right on through. No problems, easy peasy. I saw Barbara Wilder on there,
Yeah,
and there's your mom, Rhonda.
You.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
We're so glad you're with us. You know, yes, I certainly felt it within myself, and I felt like, the way that we showed up today together is very indicative of how we both presenced our resistance and showed up. So here we are. I feel great. How about you?
I feel really great, yeah. And I think it was really powerful to observe that a huge part of setting our intentions this last lunar cycle really involved sharing ourselves in this specific way, right? And
I just have to do it. I mean, the sun's coming in. It's a beautiful day in Boulder, and I've got hot tea.
Hot tea, and that's the Love Lingo mug.
Love Lingo,
and then
with the Love Lingo shirt, which...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one I have, the warden is me. The warden is me, which means we also have the key to our freedom. And I think that's the energy we're trying to step into. And it was, interesting to observe actually right before we had decided to do this podcast last week, or this live stream, that prior to that we had quite a bit of resistance that had come up. I mean, we'd set multiple times and multiple days to work on this. And what was so powerful, and what I think is one of the things we're wanting to demonstrate about a new level of connection, is being willing to acknowledge the fears that come up, being willing to even say, hey, here's the worst case scenarios that are going through my mind about what would happen if we took this chance, if we shared ourselves in this way. And And then it was so incredible that after we shared that all of a sudden within like that, maybe that day, we had created the page and we had really locked down a date and we'd created the event. And it's like all that resistance was moved through, and it was moved through because we were actually willing to go through it. And the beautiful thing is when we're able to go through it together.
Mm-hmm. And the point is to resolve the resistance. Most of us, the way we've been conditioned is to sort of look at resistance or pain or other kind of contrast as a bad thing or something to avoid, stay away from. Truly, in our work here, at least in the work that I've done here at the River House, we have a game that we play for our retreats called the agreeability game. And the agreeability game, the point of it is to resolve resistance so that we can move forward into a spirit and a state of harmony. One of the things I like about our process so far is, you know, sometimes we put a timestamp on something, and sometimes we take a timestamp off of something. And I think that's what we did with this podcast, was we worked through the resistance until it was really right, and we went past a couple of days that we actually thought we'd start this, and it turned out that it was just perfectly perfect when it came out the way.
Yeah, Holy Spirit be you in charge is
Yeah,
one of
right.
the things that, you know, we say to each other. And that's, you know, through a Course in Miracles teaching, something I've just learned to do is to say, Holy Spirit, you know, be you in charge. And then to also, you know, I think when we want to create our own freedom and realize we're not the warden, is how can I actually allow myself to be guided and to follow my passions and to follow the purpose and to follow the energy. Whereas there's been so many times where the energy's been there and I've been too afraid to follow, or vice versa, where I've tried to force something even though there's no energy there. And I think trying to get out of that state of also living in constant resistance, because either the energy's there and I'm not going, or it can go the opposite way where the energy is completely blocked and we're trying to force it. And, you know, so one of the things we talked about last week is we were talking about the idea of a new paradigm of kind of that twin flame idea as it came channeled through you in your book, The Gift is Listening. And so I know we referenced it, but we just didn't have the book on us at that time. And so I think there were a couple topics we wanted to go off of from that reading.
Well, you just brought up something really good. I like the presence first,
Yeah.
which was you talk a little bit about letting go of the resistance and being in the flow and making choices that you followed through on versus being too afraid sometimes or trying to push sometimes. And what we talked about before the show was, how do we each recognize our resistance and then grow our own interpersonal desire field to be bigger than our resistance? Because ultimately, people won't do things unless they feel like doing them, truthfully. I mean, a lot of people do things out of obligation, but we all know that doesn't work on this show anyway. So if we find, or when we find ourselves in resistance, this natural process of growth that we're in, as soon as we can back up, take a deep breath and say, okay, there's some resistance here. How can I grow my desire field bigger? What kind of practices can I employ? Is it some breath work? Is it some exercise? Is it some counseling? Is it discussing this with my partner? Whatever it is. But once we cue in, not to get lost in the resistance, which is where we are in the lunar cycle, say, okay, wait a minute. I've done this before. I've gone down this path. I've gotten lost. I wasted a couple of days. Things didn't get done. How can I grow my desire field so the resistance is no longer in play?
That's kind of that idea of love conquers fear even. You know, like that idea of, you know, love is actually a far more powerful and mobilizing energy, whereas fear can often be very immobilizing. And so that idea of, you know, working through some of the fears, but that's also by incorporating some of the remedy, you know, and some of the remedy is love, is passion, is purpose. And, you know, for us, since a spiritual practice is a big part of both of our lives, and that's the triangular relationship that we were talking about, and I know that's been a huge desire of mine for a long time, but also, like we were talking about last week, our lives are already a complete reflection of what we want. So I could have said that I wanted it for years prior to now, but based on the expression of how it showed up in my reality, the truth is that I want it now.
And you've been working for this now for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we noticed about our lives that intersect so beautifully is we've both been dedicated practitioners for years and years. And a lot of times, the way we wake up to practice is that the contrast of life really kicks our butt.
Have you guys ever had that experience?
You know, it's like, but as soon as we can get over the shame for having to go to rehab or getting a divorce or going bankrupt or whatever it is, it's like, then we can start to work on ourselves and make that thing a gift. It's like every single thing that comes to us, it's just like what Jim says, denial of errors and chaos equals all is perfect just as is. Mm-hmm. So everything is perfect, and however, whatever our resistance is to the perfection that already exists, which is the will of the divine, then we can move through that. As soon as we can step back and say, oh, this is just my identification with this story or with this limitation or with this need, with this wound, I can let that go. And you brought that up last week when you said this connection that we have, we aspire to step forward with the present moment rather than bringing our past experience in as the platform that we build upon.
Yeah, if we want a future that's unlike the past, then we have to stop aligning the past with the future. And some of that, you know, another thing kind of about the idea of errors, Jim, like errors are meant for correction. You know, sin requests to be punished, right? So if I want to give myself a bunch of guilt for all the contrasts and all the things that you know, all of the challenging lessons I presented myself in the past, then I'm going to think, okay, it's a sin to be punished, even if I'm taking full responsibility, but in a way that's breeding shame or guilt into my experience, then I'm going to expect myself to continue to get punished. So I'm going to align the past with the future and continue to choose the same types of dynamics, the same sort of patterns that have been causing me pain in the past. And so that idea of complete forgiveness and a recognition of the importance of everything that has already come, but then also that state of learning how to trust ourselves, to trust the work that we've done, to say, hey, you know, this was a pattern of mine. I can identify the pattern without also continuing to anticipate it, because we are willing to work through the fears, we are willing to work through the resistance, and we are recognizing everybody is responsible and nobody is at fault. And I'm gonna go grab my my Course in Miracles book real quick so I can also share this on the download without you having to hear yourself. And then
well, that leaves just me and everyone here all by ourselves. So for you, for those of you that don't know me before, my name's MysterE, and we are at the River House, which is a center for evolutionary change in just south of Boulder, Colorado. We have a small piece of property here, and we're growing, and we offer labyrinth and yoga and art and classes and all kinds of amazing things. And also it's a place for people to come get away from the world and enter a domain of magic and mystery and really enjoy yourself. And our mission simply is to leave people a little lighter than we found them. And everyone that comes to the River House leaves a little lighter than we found them, for the most part, you know. So there is a lot coming up right now. We're in this incredible, dynamic, changing universe. You know, we sit here at the River House. We're a little bit in a utopia, if you will. And I don't watch the news or have any idea what's going on in the world, but I keep hearing snippets of it. But life here continues the way it always has, which is chop wood, carry water, take care of yourself, do practice, and enjoy life. So if that sounds like something you'd like to do with Thanksgiving coming up, and you've got a place that you normally go to that's not available, please come and join us.
You'll love it. We could walk the labyrinth. You know, that's one of the things I did the very first time I came here, and it was beautiful. And what I realized as I walked through the labyrinth, and you gave me these beautiful instructions for going through it, and it was anything that came up that, you know, any fears, any backstories, any guilt, any challenges, to put those into a heart rock, to like just grab those from the energy field and put them into the heart rock, send them love, send them kindness, send them compassion, give myself forgiveness for whatever comes up, and then to set it at the altar in the middle. and then to just feel the freedom of walking out, and the fact that, you know, the way out is never the same way as the way in. So, and that's what I want us to realize as we're on a healing process too, is that even though we might have put ourselves through some incredibly hard times, through some really difficult situations, that getting back to truth, getting back to source is actually the easier, softer way.
And that's exactly what Andy's saying on the screen right there. Peace is realized by deciding to bring resistance to the altar, no effort required. And
we're completely aligned.
That's exactly
Andy,
what you said about the labyrinth, and really what we were saying earlier about bringing the desire field above the resistance field, because a lot of times that includes spiritual practice. I desire to transcend this. I desire to be more of a conduit for God. I desire for God's will to be my will. Those are the same kind of desires. And for me, it really works to open the heart. You know, it's so easy to close the heart down. You know, we want to protect ourselves from the world, and the world can be a violent and confusing place, and so we close up, and when we really open the heart and open that desire of trust is a natural byproduct of that. So
yeah, and one of the things we were, you know, chatting about, and it was so interesting, this is how it always works with my Course in Miracles book, as we were talking about the idea of increasing the field of desire to be beyond the field of resistance as we're moving forward in any area of our lives. It doesn't just have to be relationship. It can be stepping out of our comfort zone, being willing to be more social. It could be in work, so many other arenas of life, allowing more abundance and following our goals and dreams, that the goal really does determine the outcome. And that's a section that's in A Course in Miracles. And so as soon as I've been, as soon as I was talking about that, I asked Siri for a random number generator about 4 or 5 times, and she wouldn't listen. And so I just opened the book up, and I opened it up to 365. And, you know, immediately the section was setting the goal. And it asks 2 questions about whenever we're moving forward with anything in life, which is, what do I want to come of this? What do I want to come of this, and what is it for? What do I want to come of this, whatever this is, whether it's work, whether it's relationship, whether it's beginning a new club or group, whatever it could be. What is this for? What do I want to come of this? And it was talking about how the ego or the fear's way of doing things is actually to do it the exact opposite, which is to say that whatever direction the situation goes is going to be what determines what the goal is. But it's saying, actually, no, we should be doing it on the onset. I think that's what, connecting on the lunar cycle really allows us to do, is to set some intentions and to say, what is this for? What do we want to come of this?
And then when we have an absolute yes, a shared vision emerges, and then as we go through the lunar cycle, we can check in with our resistance and what we're learning along the way, and what the connection is giving us in terms of both a reflection and also encouragement, and also maybe some concern. You never know.
Coming soon to a theater near you. No, I'm just...
we actually realized that we've sort of opened ourselves up to a little bit of a reality show here. So, and we kind of tricked ourselves, or at least I got tricked. But here I am.
Yeah, I feel like you might have even started it last time. No, I'm just playing.
Wait till the full moon comes around.
I know. The full moon episode, that's where
I think that's where we are next time we come on, the full moon. So.
Yeah, what is it for? And you know, what's so interesting, and we kind of touched on this on last week, which is that idea of so often what we'll do going into a situation is already have a perceived goal, already have an outcome that we have in mind. And then we just hope the other person is either reading our mind, or that we're gonna be able to manipulate them enough, or kind of swing things in our direction. But how empowering would it be for all of us to really know what we want, what we desire, what we'd like to create when we go into a situation and when we go into a dynamic, and then to be so empowered that we can share the power with the other person involved. And sharing that power means that I get to say, here's my wants, my desires, my preferences, what I want to create with this. And I'm empowered enough to do so. And then he can say, how much does that resonate with where he envisions his life going, with what he wants to do, and what
And I
he
don't
wants
say
to
no,
create?
so.
It makes it easy, right? Can't say you'll get that lucky. Can't. And what I love about what Andy just said too is that this is completely possible to do with relationships you're already engaged in that might have some fearful dynamics, that might have some patterns that are no longer working, that these kinds of principles and these kind of ideas and creating the shared vision, the sharing the power thing, it goes back and forth until we have created a shared power or a shared vision that, shared power and shared vision.
Sure, it's a channel for the energy to flow.
Yeah, that we both feel accountable to it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just mine, and it's not just his, it's something that we've created together.
And yet we each have our own individual expression, and we're setting up a connection that regardless of outcome, we both stand up in ourselves.
Yeah, we're learning how to be transparent. We're learning how to ask for what we want.
And that's the key word, is transparency. And a lot of times it just, for a lot of people that means don't keep secrets, or just you need to know, the things that you don't want to tell me. But it's more than that. It really goes back to what she alluded to, which is, and what Rhonda just says, be brave enough to ask for what you want. Be brave enough to share with your partner, share with your, your divine playmate, if you will, like this is what I really feel like I want, and this is where I've got hung up in the past, and these kind of things are just amazingly, and the energy that is transformed simply by laying these things out on the table is amazing. And so, because when you have two people that come and share things that are vulnerable, and then all of a sudden you have a match, two things come out and you go, wow, podcast, this is the way it works. Bang, here we are. And that's really what you're looking for. Now the partnership has a purpose.
Yeah.
Albeit it might just be to sit down for an hour with some beautiful people for, once a week. But it's much more than that.
Yeah, because we're teaching what we need to learn, and we're trying to give ourselves a brand new experience. And so, we're not even, we're not coming here as experts of anything. That's why we preface the show by saying we don't know, So if you have any complaints, you signed the waiver when you saw what it was called, right? Which is like, we're not claiming to have all the answers, but we're in a discovery process, and we're wanting to share the discovery process, because part of teaching is demonstrating. And so that idea of like, if we're wanting to create a new paradigm of relating and of connecting with each other, why wouldn't we want to share that? And when we do create anything out of love, in any aspect of our lives, whether that be individually or together, Course in Miracles is huge on, love is meant for extension. It's meant for creation. It's meant for sharing. And so let's do that.
I'm in.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And so we're not saying no to this. So it's like, if we feel, that feeling of guidance, to just listen, and then to move past the resistance that the listening brings up.
Well, there was something you said earlier. You talked about the ego wanting to do the goal backwards. In other words, if we're not communicating with the person or the people that we're in any type of connection with, then we've made up a fantasy, or we have a projection about our expectations of how we wish them to perform, and that keeps them locked in a box that they can't possibly escape from, in our minds anyway. And then you've sowed confusion into it, and that's a form of self-sabotage.
Yeah, exactly. And it says here, and this is, for any of you who are also students, is on page 366 of the Foundations for Inner Peace. But it says, in the ego's procedure, this is reversed, meaning that we don't ask ourselves, what do we want to come of this? We don't ask what it is for. We don't clarify the goals at the beginning. I'm talking about first date status. Why not? Why waste time if you're not trying to go to the same place? Right. But it says, the situation becomes the determiner of the outcome, which could be anything. If we just say, okay, we'll just see where this wants to go, but with no perceived direction, who would start a road trip that way, Mm-hmm. That could actually be fun. But it says that, fear doesn't know what it wants to come of any situation. And so it's only aware of what it doesn't want, and only that. It has no positive goal at all. And that's the other thing is, a lot of times, if we've had challenging relationships in the past, we'll say, I don't want a person who has that quality. I don't want to do that. I don't want to lose myself again. What are some other things? I don't want to accept less than I'm worth at work. We're so aware of what we don't want.
And then at the end of that term, you're having to undo all of the projections and fantasies and misconceptions that you sowed into that situation. So all we're trying to do here is be very simple. And I'm not saying that human relationships are easy necessarily, but we can simplify, and we can open our hearts, and we can communicate with transparency, and we can leave people lighter than we found them, better than we found them, and we can part with love, open with love, part with love, and we can use love as the guiding force.
And that's part of the goals of doing the lunar cycle as well, is recognizing that we're constantly going through this process, we're constantly going through this experience. And hi, Jahan, so good to see you. Yeah, trust, make America relate again.
Yeah.
And then I have a shirt also, but you can't really see it because it's backwards, but it says, love you through the new moon. Mm-hmm. Love you through the new moon. And
we'll have that shirt up this afternoon, so we'll start putting some things on our Facebook page. And all of our products, just so you know, are part of our compassionate economic system here. So a third of the revenue from our sales go to the artist that created it. We empower the individual first. That's always the most important thing. A third of the sales go to the community that has given birth to this vision. And a third of it we pay forward to other compassionate organizations and people who are making their way on their hero's journey to live their life purpose and mission. So it's a beautiful, beautiful way to conduct commerce, do good, and also wear a fantastic message. And what a great message for today.
Yeah.
Right now, going into 2021, trust. We've got to reframe what just happened as a gift. Really, as a gift. We've got to open up. This is the most wonderful, incredible opportunity any of us have ever had in our lifetimes. There's been an incredible restructuring, an incredible shedding of old ways of control. People are looking at themselves like like they've never done before, and all of a sudden it's like we have an opportunity to unite, come together, connect, love one another in a new way, and start compassionate economic systems and really help empower as many people as we can right now in this great time of change.
Yeah, and I appreciate what Jim was kind of just sharing as well about the things that we often don't like in others, our projections of the things we don't love within ourselves. And so that's a huge part of where forgiveness and the idea of forgiveness plays in, even to forgiving ourselves. And I think soon when we get into your musing that you wrote about, kind of what love can look like, what love we can aspire for love to be and to look like in relationships. It's kind of that idea of really forgiving ourselves for the past and recognizing it is all in divine order. Those times, we've accepted way less love than we deserve. The times we've chased the people who
hurt us the most.
The times that we really confused fear with love, and the resulting effects of then being afraid of love. And that's to me what I think is so powerful to rewrite, is to realize that there have been times in the past where I've the person I thought I loved the most was actually the person that I feared the most, and that idea of it resulted in me being afraid of love, and that I don't have to align that past with the future, that we get to create a new experience every day. And we also get to decide how we want to perceive the past. We're the ones telling ourselves the story about what that was, what we made it mean about us, about the other person. It's like we're creating all these stories. And so why wouldn't we just, if we're going to create a story, why not create one that gives us some peace? Wow, that was really meant to happen.
Yeah. What a gift that connection was. It helped me grow into the person I am now.
And that takes self-love and self-compassion.
Right.
But when we're not in that place, when we're in that place of any sort of self-loathing or self-pity or anger or grievances, at ourselves or other people, it's really hard to get to that place. but even just to recognize, wow, I want healing. We're not doing ourselves any favors by staying in any amount of self-loathing, because you have a lot of gifts and they're meant to be shared. And we stifle those off when we don't acknowledge them, or when we only pay attention to our flaws or mistakes. It's good to see you, Brandy.
Everything is learning. We talked a little bit about it on the last show, and we let ourselves off the hook. You know, we're all learning. There's no level to attain. It's simply continue to learn and to grow and to love. How can we open to more love?
There's no place to get. I think that has been the best thing to realize, and that's what I love about the idea of you know, dating on the lunar cycle as well, is that there's not this other perceived outcome or goal or destination. Then, like, let's give ourselves the experience we're meant to have on this lunar cycle. On this lunar cycle. And, like, let's give ourselves an experience rather than a destination.
Your mom says the past is gone anyway.
Oh,
yeah,
dang.
Right.
I love that.
and the lunar cycle unto itself has, you know, it's a 1 month process essentially. And if you think about what the moon is, when the moon and the sun and the earth are all lined up, and then the moon is out where it is now, which is out at the first quarter. Think about the billions of gallons of water that have just moved across the earth because of the gravitational pull. Well, we're being pulled and stretched as well. And so when we align with the natural cycles of life, we can learn so much about ourselves and about how we're responding and reacting and integrating ourselves with the intentions that we set. So there's a real practical methodology that goes with this sort of mysticism, and we'll be sharing that at the start of the next lunar cycle. We'll have more concrete steps on actually how this works and how you can apply it to your life.
Yeah, in your life, in other different, you know, areas. It can be in relationship, but it can be in other places. And I think one of the beautiful things about it for me, and I think for us, has been the idea of recognizing the patterns. And when we recognize the patterns, it can actually be, and how it's aligning with the lunar cycle or with timing over the course of a month, we actually get to get out of judgment about it. Like, instead it actually leads to more acceptance and just being like, oh, and curiosity. Because when we get to align it and see the patterns, it's like, whoa, that's curious. This happened last month at the same time.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the next phase that we move into in the middle of the next week is called I Didn't See It Coming. Or an enlightened person or an aware person would say, did not feel that coming.
Yeah.
Or did not see that coming. What happens is now our resistance is really being pulled out in this first quarter, and just before the full illumination of the truth, or the full moon, we have this sort of surprise arena where the universe likes to show us sort of in a backhanded way about where our resistance really is. So usually that's when a surprise shows up. So be aware in the next...
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Look, I can't read the name.
Jahan.
Yeah, Jahan Jefferson says, love you through the moon. Genius, right? It's genius. It's fantastic. And neither of us can take credit. And it's so powerful. It's so freeing and wonderful. So we're excited to share the gift.
Yeah, and speaking of the gift, where's your 111?
It's right behind you.
Okay, is it? Here we go.
So this book came through me a few years ago. I know it's backwards for you, but it's called The Gift is Listening. I'll put it up there a little closer maybe. And Enlightened Relationship Guide for Men. So the way it works for me is one day I'm doing one thing, and the next day a book is coming through me, and the title was given to me. In my right mind, I never would have put Enlightened Relationship Guide for Men, because I have absolutely no authority to do such a thing. But this has been 5 years out now. On the back it says, a modern shamanic exploration of relationship wisdom shared in 111 musings to unlock the codes to living your now potential. So not being clever enough to bring something like this through, but open enough in my heart to allow it to happen, has yielded incredible, incredible gifts. One of them is right here in front of you, which is been living the truth of this book and these words for years. So it has 111 poems in it, or musings, and the last one is called twin flame. And this is written from the male perspective. When she arrives reflecting only your highest truth, the mirror has no more contrast for you. Then there is no other. You have met yourself as the one. Now all of your creative energy flows in service to all. And the most important piece about this, and I believe you actually intersected here, is that how many people, we talk about fantasy, how many people are looking for the one? How many people have bent their mind around the fact that there is one true twin flame? And I don't want to take that fantasy or story away from anybody. But what this points it at is you're the twin flame. Harmonize with yourself, and then life becomes the experience of twin flame all the time. And it really has nothing to do with whether you're in a relationship or not in a relationship. It has to do with what is the quality of the connection with yourself, with your heart, with your mind, with your soul, with your spirit, with your mission, all of it. And so that's where we are.
Yeah, well, and what I love about that is that I think there's so many also conceptions that, you know, I've read about or seen, you know, online about this idea of, you know, twin flame and how they're meant to teach you your hardest lessons, and kind of that idea of it's supposed to be this contrast or this opportunity to do all of this shadow work. And I'm not, you know, disagreeing with that philosophy. I think we don't know, right? It's like whatever works for each person. But what I really love about that reflection, how it relates to the relationship to self, but then also the idea we were talking about last week, which is our lives are a reflection of where we are at the moment. And so to take a good look at the current people who are the biggest players in our lives, or the biggest forces in our lives, the biggest aspects of our lives, and to say, is this reflecting my highest truth? Because if not, there's some integration that needs to happen. And there have definitely been, you know, we were talking about that idea of how it's felt so easy and so natural, and that there hasn't been all this contrast or challenges. And, you know, obviously it's also new.
Honeymoon.
It's also new. I was going there. It's also new. But the idea of, in the past, it's like it's often started off that way. Even it started off as that challenge. It started off as that runner chaser. It started off as that inability to communicate honestly. It started off those ways. And I think really sometimes you really do have to go through those experiences of even realizing what you don't want, but you have to get to that second critical piece A Course in Miracles was talking about, is figuring out what you do want, so that your life can become a reflection of that, and so that the people and opportunities in your experience can be a reflection of that.
And what if we took it one step further? What if we said not what you want, but what was wanted for your life? In other words, to really open up that divine channel. What is really wanted for my life, and how can I be a conduit? And then how can I get my hands and my mind and my heart all working together for what is wanted? And that's what the Twin Flame poem said about, now all my energy goes into creative service for all, or all my creative energy goes into service for humanity. And ultimately, that's where you and I have intersected on. Gives a purpose to our connection, and that excites us. And that we can work with that goal.
Capricorn Venus, right? Has to have a purpose, has to have a meaning, you know? And that's another fun thing we get to add into the mix of, you know, is astrology and all of these other, you know, different plays, and just realizing how many things are connected with each other, and how we can utilize so many different things as tools. And I think, you know, the thing about setting the goal, about creating a vision, about asking, what is this for, and what do we want to come of this, is that then we're each able, and this is in our individual lives as well as, you know, in our connection with each other, is to say, how much are my actions or inactions in alignment with where we say we want to go? So if I say I'm trying to go to, you know, Taos, New Mexico for the hot springs, and I know that that's where I want to go, if I start, you know, driving east or, you know, south or whatever different direction I'm not supposed to go.
Good luck on getting to Taos there.
Good luck on getting to Taos. Well, I get to actually gauge and be like, if this is where I say I want to go, if this is what we say our vision is, that this is what it's for. If we're constricting or not being honest with each other, or keeping secrets or closing down, like, is that really going to take us to where we say we want to go?
Well, how many of us have just sort of these little habits that we have that take us away from our purpose and our mission, even for a minute, and we justify them, and we think it's okay, it's no big deal. Right. Well, what we're doing is we're giving energy to that part of us that can come in and derail us later. You know, we really want to dedicate our whole life, everything we've got, our mind, our heart, our hands, everything, every moment, you know, can we continue to leave every situation, every person, every room better than we found them, and continue in that life of service? How can we get there? And somehow the twin flame journey, the connection that we have, and being in purpose and on your mission all seem to be the same thing. Now, why is that?
Why is that?
Why is that? Isn't it fun? Isn't it fun?
Well, and I think one of the things we were chatting about earlier as to what we think is so powerful, or, you know, what's helping us so much, is that we each have our own disciplines that are completely separate from each other, that keep us grounded to our own individual connections with spirit, in whatever way spirit comes to and through us. And that's very much in alignment with what Andy just said, which is, you know, God can transform those fearful relationships, those unholy relationships, and then we get to see, you know, the flames. We get to see the truth. We get to see the love. We get to see what's there. We get to show up in those ways. But I think a huge part of that, and what this alludes to as well, is this idea of, you know, when we get to our highest truth, and how do we do that?
By going in rather than out.
Yes, exactly. And so having our own connections, and I call them, you know, tethers, that I have multiple things that I'm doing. You know, again, lots of Capricorn in my chart, so I could tell you what my plans are for the next 3 weeks because I keep a very regimented schedule. But that's actually really important for me, is to have some things that I'm doing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis that keep me grounded in spirit, and keep me grounded in God, and keep me grounded in love. Because fear is very cunning, you know, and it can get you wrapped up in its story really quick. And if you don't already have some regular checkpoints in your schedule or your life that, like, bring you back out of the insanity that fear can take you in, then it's really easy to project that onto a partner. It's really easy to project that onto your job, or to externalize what's happening with you, rather than to get back into the present moment of taking full responsibility while also not having to find fault.
What would you say to somebody who just was joining us, and they really wanted to find their soulmate, or they wanted to find the twin flame experience in a partner, they wanted to find somebody? What would the advice be?
That's a really interesting question, because I think one of the most beautiful things is that I think a lot of times it happens when it's like you recognize that it's not coming from a place of need. You know, that it's that idea of recognizing, wow, as we're living in our highest truths, that it's recognizing that somebody is a complement to your life rather than a need. And that's where I think that kind of the beauty of interdependence comes in, which is that's also leaving it up to spirit, that it's like, yes, I do want to do the things that I need to do right now to prepare myself for who I want to be as my ideal in a relationship. And that's a huge thing that I think needs to be a turning point, is instead of focusing on our ideal of who that person needs to be, what they need to look like, how much money they need to make, or, you know, any of those different things that we create as this externalized vision of what this perfect partner would be. I think it's about realizing, what is my ideal of who I want to be in relationship? How can I get really clear on what I have to bring, to contribute, to share, and who I want to be? Because no matter how that other person shows up or what happens, if I'm really living in that truth and in that integrity, then I've found that I don't have to be in any regrets regardless of how the situation goes, because I got to live in my highest truth that I was capable of at that time, and that has changed over time.
Yeah, and look at the quality of how you left your last relationships. Who were you in that? How much work did you do on the backside of those? How much truth did you find within yourself about really what happened in those situations? And, you know, the way one ends is a very good indication about how the next one's going to begin. What you didn't learn in the last one, it's bound to come up.
Yeah, like that idea of a lesson will repeat itself until it's learned. Right. And so really doing some of those integration processes, being willing to look at the patterns and what has gone on in those past connections and relationships, and seeing, wow, you know, there might have been a couple of different, you know, bodies, but what were the commonalities? Because if we really want to end the cycle, and I mean, I would say the last cycle that I was in was about 6 years, and it was you know, wash, rinse, repeat, you know, like there were so many things that were the exact same, but I had to be willing to look at it, and what I was looking at was my part. What I was looking at is the fact that those were the people I was attracted to. And there's nothing right or wrong with that, because they were beautiful people in so many different ways. But also they represented something that I was using to hurt myself. And that was a big part of the pattern for me, was this idea of I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, whatever the narrative was. And so it's the beautiful thing is to recognize every single person was playing their part perfectly. They were playing their part perfectly, and I'm sure I was proving their stories to them as well. I was playing my part perfectly in the ways that they were using me to probably hurt themselves, and it was this, you know, dynamic we went back and forth with. And so what I had to really address was that story within myself of the I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, so I could actually put myself in an energy of being willing to receive and to give love.
Right. It just occurred to me, one of the things about the twin flame with this one, which keeps us off the hook, was I don't have to have a story about you being my perfect match. If I'm my own twin flame and I'm comfortable with myself and I'm in love with myself and I have my own individuality, my own empowerment, then there's nothing you can possibly take away from me except to bring a reflection of more empowerment.
Yeah, and then also I think that really goes back to the idea of trust. Again, is that, you know, we go into the world thinking, you know, maybe I can't trust, I don't know if I can trust again. It's not about trusting the other person. Do you trust you? Do you trust that you've done some healing work? Do you trust that you are rewriting these patterns? Do you trust that you're ready to move into a new cycle and a new experience? And do you trust that you want to stay in your integrity and remain in your ideal as you're in connections and relationships moving forward? That's what I need to trust. One
of the cool things about what you and I are doing is we've had an opportunity both to sort of skip out on a few things that we normally do, but now all of a sudden there's a new connection, you know, that some of the things that are important to one or the other of us could get pushed aside, but we've really maintained our practices and maintained our projects and continued to grow in the newness of this. And I think that's a very encouraging sign, because usually new love will take people into a new experience and maybe they'll drop off some of the things that were really keeping them strong in themselves.
Yeah.
And so we've got to really, really, you know, support one another. I don't like that word support. We're going to really encourage one another to stay after those things that keep us strong, because that's who I want to be in a connection with.
Well, and because that's you know, it's so interesting, because we'll fall in love with this, you know, person for their exuberance and for, you know, all of these qualities that are an accumulation of all the things they're doing in their lives to take care of themselves. And then if we get into a place of fear, what can happen is that then we want to, you know, constrict or restrict all of the things that are actually creating them into being that person we really care about. And so that's why, you know, love is freedom. Love is freedom. Love is freedom. That idea of I want you to have so many amazing connections and friendships and activities and things that you enjoy doing in your life, because then you come to the dynamic, into the relationship as a fulfilled person, and that I still have to keep maintaining all the things that I do. And does it lead to us having a ton of time to spend together? Not necessarily, but we show up and we're a fulfilled version of ourselves because we're not dropping off all the things that are important to us. We're not demanding any sacrifice, and we're not really getting insecure about the things that people already have in their lives. So it's like we come into dynamics as whole people that have whole lives and all of these different things. And so, you know, to come in and say, hey, I love you, please change.
No.
That's not love.
Wow, right. That's, yeah. You know, it might be about time for this.
Oh, it's card time.
Card time, yeah.
Why doesn't whoever he's going to shuffle until someone says stop?
Okay.
And whenever somebody says stop, we'll see where the deck is.
I like
at.
what Jim's saying there. Love is freedom. And that's really, that's where you want to attract a connection with. You know, freedom, a place of freedom. If you're feeling really free and alive, I'm going to share that, you know, and
it
bring
keeps the
more
love alive, right?
That's right.
I mean,
bring more of it in.
What kills love faster than feeling constricted, restricted, walking on eggshells, in fear?
One of the things I will say that the gift is listening has taught me over the last 4 years is any challenge that comes into a connection can be resolved, and you can move back into, all right, there says Andy, stop, turn it over.
Oh my gosh, awesome.
It's the clean it up card. Here, I'll let you go from here.
Okay. I mean, but he picked it, right? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So clean
Everybody
it up.
was sitting there going, he's still shuffling. Nobody said stop yet.
So, you know, what I love about the idea of clean it up is what this is, you know, to me what this card talks about. And it's a 2 and a 1. So in numerology, that's a 3. So here we are in the power of 3 again, the triangular relationship, the idea of a compassionate economy. You know, like 3 comes up a lot, you know, Holy Spirit be you in charge, you know, and that we try to use that as a basis of our connection. But the idea of clean it up, I think, is also even those past habits, those past patterns, being willing to clean that up. And I think what that does look like is what we were just talking about, which is being willing to take some stock of what we've done in the past. Clean it up means taking responsibility.
Yeah, I couldn't find it, but there's a line in this book that says, clean it up with your ex-lovers so a harmonious field can exist for all. And, you know, we've got to look at what's in our rearview mirror, because our memory serves a purpose, a spiritual purpose. Our memory does. When we think of something that we don't like, or we have a judgment or whatnot, that is like a detective's map to show us there's something inside that needs correction. And if we're aware enough, we can follow the thought and find that it has roots in our gut. And we can open up to the healing that wants to happen. And those two things are in polarity, and we can work with that and resolve it in our heart. But in terms of our life, it's like we've got to, if we have things that we need to forgive, the memories are going to bring them up, and that means work on yourself, resolve them, let them go, and when you do, that brings the harmony to your life here.
Yeah, and I think part of, you know, cleaning it up is taking a good and honest look at so many different aspects of our lives. I know it's really, you know, it's easy to get stuck on one aspect, you know, and sometimes depending on the day, right, we might wake up and be having an awesome day, and all of our focus is on all the beauty and all the excitement and all the cool things going on in our lives, but we also wake up sometimes in a bad mood, and it's like all of a sudden we're just focusing on what's lacking, what's missing, what's not there. If that person was different, I'd be happy. If my job was different, I'd be happy. And so I think part of clean it up is really saying, how much am I, and is my energy, and is my life in alignment with who I truly want to be?
And this is exactly the part of the moon cycle that we're in right now. Are my hands in the dream? Which means out of the head, working on your life, working on your purpose, and really in the present moment. And it's challenging to be in the present moment if you hadn't cleaned things up.
Yeah, I think my car needs that lesson.
I've seen it.
But I mean, but that is a really good point, that it's like when our lives are feeling disorganized or chaotic, or if there's one area of our lives, like if you know that you have a purpose and a mission, and that's actually, it's interesting because that's around the time that we met, was when I was, in a state where I'd been feeling, constricted, and like I'd been kind of getting into a place of stagnancy, and I wasn't listening. It's like I was getting guidance, but that resistance field was really strong, and it was bogging my life down, because that type of energy is super heavy, super weighted.
And whose responsibility is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is to recognize. And, what I did the very first time I came here, I ended up reading a section of A Course in Miracles called The State of Grace that I referenced in our last podcast, which said anytime we're in strain, that we're not living in our natural state of grace that love would have us be in. And so how interesting was it that as soon as I was like, you know what, something's got to give, I didn't even have to determine what that ended up looking like. I ended up getting called the next week, and major things started shifting in my life, but it's like I had to move past the resistance. First, I had to acknowledge the resistance, and I had to be like, I am going to make a change. And I didn't even have to decide what the change was. Spirit determined it for me once I made a decision.
And it's never as big a deal as you've made it out to be in your mind anyway.
No. No.
Jim says, I am 100% responsible for what happens to me. Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought it up. It was sort of the cornerstone of our last program. And there's really nothing you can do with your life until you accept 100% responsibility. Even if it seems like you're just bumping through life, somehow, some way, until you say, I'm 100% responsible. Because even if you say, I'm 99% responsible, what have you left yourself with?
Well, without a complete solution.
Right, with a fracture.
That's the cool thing, is that when you're 100% responsible, you're also 100% empowered, and that's what we want to view it as. It's not a burden, not something to become overwhelmed by, but something to actually get inspired by. Like that idea of, wow, if I'm the problem, I'm also the solution, and that's so much easier to tap into when I actually invite a higher purpose, a higher power, spirit into the mix, that I'm not trying to solve it all myself.
Yep.
And then it's beautiful when we can actually, collaborate and share and, do these things that inspire and build each other up as well.
Right. So 14 minutes to go. We haven't gotten one question today. Can you believe it?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe they already know
questions.
everything, and
Yeah.
we're just...
Well, we don't know, but they do.
That's right.
No, I'm just kidding, because you guys don't know either, else you guys wouldn't be here. And we're talking about no as in N-O. So we appreciate you guys saying, yes to whatever this is.
So we've already figured out our dynamic a little bit. I'm the resistant one. She's the one that keeps, pushing me beyond my own limitations. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that has always been my MO. Like, that's been the interesting thing about the dynamic for me, is that, I tend to be one that's not, I'm certainly not as emotionally, what would be the word with that, like?
Aquarius.
Yeah, Aquarius. I guess that would be the word for that.
Pisces.
Yeah, Aquarius and Pisces, and so he is, far more in touch with his, he experiences emotions.
I'm an artist.
Yeah, more than I do. But what's been amazing about that is this has been a huge part of rewriting, a story or a dynamic for me, is that I've been actually able to get so much more in touch and so much more honest and vulnerable and connected than I have in the past. And that's been because I'm actually connecting with someone who is very connected to their emotions and is very aware and self-aware and willing to share what he's going through. And then the beauty for that has been based on everything I've learned in A Course in Miracles about innocence, is that idea of, wow, wherever you're at is okay, and like being able to show up for him wherever he ends up being has been teaching me how to, love in a way that actually feels so much more loving than in the past.
Here's the deal. I feel like, regardless of whether somebody's emotional or not emotional, it's, does the person you're relating with have the capacity to move the needle and get beyond the story, and can they do that in a way that uplifts the partnership? Because if one of you or both of you are staying stuck in something and it continues to come up and it continues to derail what's happening, then you've got something a little bit more than somebody that just needs to let go of emotion.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got to look at what's my participation in this and why am I dedicating so much time and energy to it?
Yeah, and I think also being willing to, we only really need one, when we have a mission, when we have a vision, when we, ask ourselves, what is it for? What do we want to come of this? Then what's really powerful is I think that really helps move through the fears and through the resistance.
It's not about me, it's not about you.
No, it's not about either one of us. And if either one of us can be honest and present with the other person when triggers or when fears come up, then no one has to be wrong. No one has to shut down. No one has to feel like in the future they can't share.
Right.
And so we get to keep the flow open rather than, hey, you're triggered and that's triggered me, and now we're just going back and forth and shutting down. And so if we're doing our own work individually, then any of the times either one of us has had fear come up, which has happened on both sides, right? Then
not me.
Yeah, except for him. When it's come up, we've been able to really give each other acceptance.
I real early on in my marriage, I was married for 18 years. I have 3 daughters, amazing human beings. Kate said to me, she said, don't ever make them wrong. Our job is to keep them talking. And she's really speaking about when they go through puberty and their teenage years and whatnot. Keep the dialogue going. Whatever it is, don't make them wrong for what they've done. Keep the dialogue going. Keep the connection going. Keep that happening. And that's really what you're saying. It's a great way to look at life. Don't make anybody wrong. Don't make anything wrong. Simply be with life as it is. And that eliminates a tremendous amount of resistance just right there. And
even, being present and then taking full responsibility. I mean, what that ends up looking like is saying, okay, I can acknowledge and be here and hear what you're going through, and I can also be honest about what it is bringing up for me and take responsibility for, hey, this is a past pattern of mine that I'm afraid of witnessing. This is a part of my past. This is a part of my story. This is a part of my fear, rather than saying you. It's saying, I just want to also be transparent about what this is bringing up for me. And then that doesn't really put anyone in a threatening or defensive stance because each person is taking responsibility.
Like I said last time, it's hard to get mad at somebody when you realize you're the creator. And if you do, you're way out of sorts. And if people could really see that, most people walk around and feel justified in their anger. And so there's a quote in the Evolutionary Guidebook, which is just between us in the blue book there. But it talks about when you feel anger, just to admit it, rather than project it, rather than throw it at somebody, just go, oh my God, I am feeling a lot of anger, rather than I am angry. You don't want to put that am in with anything too stark like that, because it will continue catalyzing and growing that energy. But if you say, I feel anger and I don't know what to do with it, my mind is making up a story that you're the cause of it. Mm-hmm. Can you help me get out of this situation? And really that's taking responsibility. That's taking things like, I'm over my head. My life feels unmanageable right now. Over here. Well, anger, wow. To be a man in this world and not feel anger, I think I think any man is really honest. They have anger about how they'd like things to be sometimes, and they aren't. And
I think that's a way to move through it. And I did a lesson through A Course in Miracles recently, and it said when those things come up, like let's not avoid it.
Right. Let's
not disguise it. Let's not, it's like we want to recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. And so that's, that isn't denial of it. That isn't, okay, I'm experiencing this anger. I've created a story in my head about this person. But you know what? I know this is just a story in my head, so I'm just going to keep it to myself. Here's what we don't realize is that
That's
if it's still, that's resentment, and if it's still within ourselves, it is going to impact the energy. It is going to impact the way we act and react and treat one another and the way that we show up. And so the kind and loving thing to do, if we're taking responsibility instead of you're making me feel, is to be like, this is the story I've made up in my head, and I really want to get some clarity or get to some truth around this, because what we can do with our perception is we can go in life acting as though what we perceive as happening has happened or is true. And so if I've made up a story and then I'm starting to act or react to you as though it's true through assumptions, then, I might actually be manifesting it being true. And what I mean by that is if I'm like, I think he, doesn't really want to be in this anymore. He's not really interested.
And this is transparency. And this is the deep, 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 courageous steps that we must take to get these things
to get to something new.
To get to something new. It's true.
We want something new.
Because I can remember just years and years and years and years of being so ashamed of my anger or my lust or my judgment or whatever. I just keep it inside and it would just grow and fester. And it was making me sick on the inside. I'm not saying that we want to get all that out, regurgitate it, and throw it on somebody that we're in a connection with. But 100% responsibility means if I feel it, I think it, or I do it, or it happens to me, I'm responsible regardless. And to take it back to that inner work that says, okay, if I'm responsible, how can I be more responsible with what I'm creating in my life? How does that work,
Yeah, and exactly what, Jim and my mom just said as well, when Jim said, it's a call for love, it's a call for God, it's a call for healing. Yeah. And to notice that within ourselves and to notice that within each other. And then also, what my mother just said, which it also can result in literal sickness of the body. Yeah. That, when we're holding that stuff in, stuffing it in, it can literally create, illnesses or physical symptoms that we experience. It's not always just, emotional or mental.
Right. So what's the difference between anger, shame, guilt, all of it? I mean, ultimately, it's a deep down call for help, a call for healing. I mean,
and fear. It's some form of fear. And
we put labels on it, but we don't really need to identify it as any of those things. It's simply energy that wants to move so we can step into a new place of empowerment. Andy says the person apparently causing the anger is merely the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
That's good.
I love that idea, because how amazing would that be if we really recognize that whenever I'm feeling a disturbance, whenever fear or anger or upset comes up, that it is an opportunity for healing. It's a call for healing. And so the thing is, if that trigger wasn't already within me, if that story wasn't already within me, we would have neutrality.
Right.
The opposite.
If you have a reaction, it's yours.
It's yours.
Yeah.
It's something that's coming from within you. And so it is an opportunity to say, oh, maybe that person is representing a part of my past I need to forgive. Maybe that person represents a dynamic I had with my mother back in the day. Not literally, because she's the best. But, but we can look at, wow, this person represents something maybe of the past for me, or represents a characteristic in myself I haven't learned to love yet. And so it really becomes this opportunity for growth and for healing. And so we can be thankful and grateful to that person that's like, wow, I obviously did need to look at that, because I might not have known that that was still in there, but it is.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. We have 3 minutes. How do we want to finish?
Power of 3.
Power of 3.
Well, I just want to, I want to thank everyone for coming on here and joining. We don't know exactly what this is, meant to be or what it's supposed to turn into, but we would love your input. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is we're wanting to do this in a very collaborative way. And so any of your, ideas or suggestions of topics would be really appreciated, because, sometimes we just come into this week and we're like, what are we going to talk about today? And it's like,
and we haven't seen each other much, so we're both busy,
We're like, we don't know. And we just want to, express gratitude, and then, say we'd love to get suggestions.
And by the time next week rolls around, everybody will have had Thanksgiving. So what an interesting year for Thanksgiving to come around. Everybody's in a different space with what's going on out in the world. And from our heart to yours. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you get to enjoy it and make the best of it. And if you need a seat, we've got room at our table.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's so amazing just to see, you know, people from all over the country and different countries. You know, Andy to see visiting in from England, and, you know, Jim, thank you, and, you know, all the people who are really actively participating. And we'll look forward to your suggestions or ideas of what you would like to see next, because, you know, we're going to share our experience. Our goal is to be transparent and to be honest and to try to be demonstrators, and also but teaching what we need to learn. The only reason we're even here is because we're trying to check into something new, and we're realizing that the best place we could possibly start from is a place of we don't know. We're not saying no to it, but we're also not trying to project what it should look like.
And the whole world has changed and is changing, has always changed, but right now there's a precipitous momentum towards change, and may it bring us all into wholeness in this new time, and this innocence that we're going forward. You know, may we share it with others, and have a little bit more trust in the way that we walk hand in hand with what's happening right now. So.
All right, you are loved, you are loving, and you are lovable. And we will look forward to joining with you guys again next time.
Yep.
And we
Thank
still
you,
have
Andy.
like 30 more seconds, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
But we're pretty dang close, which is surprising because I don't think we did not know if it would really last from 3:33 to 4:44. But both of those numbers have been significant for us, and so.
And it means that every episode is an hour and 11 minutes.